ladies and gentlemen, we are thrilled to present our next panel discussion on a topic that is increasingly becoming a priority for businesses around the world. We're talking about the social license to operate, the concept that goes beyond regulatory approval and focuses on building trust and creating value beyond profit by engaging stakeholders such as governments, communities, and civil society. So without further ado, let's welcome our moderator and panelists to the stage. Moderator, Agim Selami, founder and executive director of the ZIP Institute. The stage is yours. Yes, you can take those stairs. Okay, Goran Đurović, Minister of Economic Development and Tourism of Montenegro. Jelena Ristić, Mastercard, country manager to Serbia, Montenegro, Bosnia and Herzegovina. Jelena. Rikard Scoufias, chairman of HEREMA, Hellenic Hydrocarbons and Energy Resources Management Company. Jelena Trninić, public affairs, communications and sustainability director at the Coca-Cola company. And Milan Antonijević, advisor for program development at National Alliance for Economic Development, NALED.
My name is Agim Selami. As I was presented by the MC, I come from North Macedonia, and as I said, it's such an interesting panel to be here to discuss social licenses to operate. I come myself from the civil society sector, and as this instrument is all about involving stakeholders, I find particular interest in the topic, and I really look forward to see how private sector companies in the Western Balkans can actually obtain their social licenses to operate. Before we start with the question and answer session with my guests, I would like to ask our expert on ESG, Rikard Scoufias, to set the tone for this panel with an introductory speech, and then we continue with the question and answer session.
As Agim said, I have been asked to set the scene for social license and bringing the stakeholders on board. So let me maybe first of all share my definition of social license. A company has successfully secured social license when stakeholders that perceive to be directly or indirectly affected by the activities of the company perceive the positive value proposition on balance to outweigh the negatives. It's a very straightforward definition, and frankly, I don't think we need to complicate it more than that. Now, of course, this is where it becomes very exciting. Because if we had had this conversation 10 years ago, the question posed to this panel might have been, is building a social license really a prerequisite for success? I think today we can just skirt over that, and I will say, with a very high degree of certainty from both personal experience as well as empirical evidence, that a company that fails to build social license today is destined for trouble. And it's important to recognize that this shift is not about semantics. This represents a shift in the paradigm of how we actually view the purpose of business. I will briefly comment on what drives this shift, and then I thought I would share some observations from my experience of what are the building components then for this social license. So as Agim said, I've had the opportunity of spending most of my career dealing with issues of complex environmental and social impacts. And over the last 10 years, much of that has been centered on the Balkan and the Mediterranean region. So what's driving this? I would say that the most fundamental driver is climate change. Specifically the realization that, and of course I come from energy, but specifically the realization that whilst cheap and abundant access to energy, hydrocarbons in particular, has been really good at helping to drive economic development and growth, it has also come at an unacceptable environmental cost. And that represents the E and the ESG equation. The S in this equation was for a long time subordinate. It was the little brother to E. But then we had the COVID pandemic. Then we had the economic downturn from the COVID recovery, a cost of living crisis. And most recently, we've had the conflict in Ukraine, which has really brought S to the forefront of this discussion with a very stark reminder of how vulnerable our socioeconomic systems can be. So companies today, they must demonstrate how they will manage both of these components, the environmental and the social, and not only by mitigating the detrimental impacts, but also how they are going to make a meaningful contribution and be a catalyst for positive change. When they fail to do so in this area of global transparency, very rapid stakeholder mobilization and free-flowing communication, they risk to lose trust and to come into conflict with consumers, with communities and governments, and as has been a lead theme today, to be excluded from access to capital. Many leaders are today grappling with how do I devise an impactful ESG strategy? How do I protect and build my social license? And if you are one of those leaders, you are not alone. A recent study by E&Y actually revealed that 3/4 of senior leaders felt uncertain about their approach to this challenge and whether or not they had the right tools in place. So when I engage with these readers and when I advise them, very often we say, where do we start? My first observation on this is there is no shortcut around the need to dedicate resources and time to really build a deep understanding of the operating environment and around the stakeholders. I know this may sound very obvious, but the fact is that the continuous flow of businesses that still end up in conflict with stakeholders, with communities, with governments, and sometimes resulting to spectacular failures in social license, shows that it is not that obvious. Looking at my work here in the region, one challenge that I have had to confront quite often is that I have to deal with an existing trust deficit among stakeholders. I will make some brief comments about a project I was involved in recently, but the truth is that historically speaking, actors in the region have not always been very good at safeguarding environmental impacts and social impacts. And this has created a stakeholder presumption that maybe this is not going to be properly managed. Sometimes when I meet with particularly foreign investors, they're struggling with this. They're frustrated. Why do I have to confront this presumed guilt? I have a great global track record and I have all the intentions in the world to do the right thing. Yes, that is true. It may be unfair, but it is a fact, and that is only going to be overcome by presence and evidence. I took over a project back in 2011, the Trans-Adriatic Pipeline. When I did so, we had had years of challenge with both government and stakeholders. It was a complex relationship. When we mobilized construction a couple of years later, we had 95% approval in the communities that we crossed. One of the key components to turn that around was over 300 meetings that we did with these communities and with the governments, where we shared our environmental and social impact assessment, where we listened to their critique, and where we really tried to figure out a way, how do we do this together? So I think the lesson on the trust deficit here is that you cannot build social license unless you also build trust. And you cannot build trust from a distance. But once you have that foundation of trust in place, then you can add to this a value proposition. And how we view value propositions is really, it's shaped by our personal histories, and the social and the cultural context in which we all exist. And this is important because what may resonate as a very powerful value proposition in a boardroom in my hometown, London, is probably not going to resonate the same way in a local community in Montenegro, or Greece, or Serbia. Take land as an example. My previous project, we went through 14,000 landowners, 550 kilometers. And I sat down in many meetings where land was treated just as, a replaceable asset, because that's how we viewed it in London. But of course, for local stakeholders, land had a deeply emotive connotation with past generations, with future generations. So to be effective, the value propositions, they must also be stakeholder specific, they must be measurable, and they must be proven. And we still too often see how investors try to skip over those important nuances and engage then with generic stakeholder propositions, job creation, tax revenue, or committing to highest standards, generally speaking. I tend to be dismissive of those. I think they're lazy because they can be applied to any project just about anywhere in the world, and they are not telling our stakeholders and our communities that we have made an effort to understand their context and what is important to them. So the lesson here is that you cannot build a powerful stakeholder value proposition unless you really understand your stakeholders, and understanding your stakeholders means recognizing that you often come from a different social and cultural context. So let me draw this to a conclusion. Few very points. One, failing to build a social license today is not a guarantee for failure, but it certainly exponentially increases your risk as a business. For a region like the Western Balkans, which has got huge investment potential, but also a very complex history and socio-political dynamics, the ability to build that social license directly relates to our ability to build trust and to articulate value propositions that resonate with stakeholders, recognizing that they often come from a different context. These details, of course, look different in extractives or in FMCG or in financial services, but I think it's important to recognize that the fundamental challenge is actually very similar, and the strategic tools for how we're getting there also apply across the board. It's a combination of art and science. But what I think, and I think this is the key theme of this conference, what I think is so exciting today is that leadership today depends less on having access to huge financial resources. And it's more about having the right mindset and the right approach. And this means that it translates into an opportunity for any organization, and it comes within the grasp of every leader to put it in commercial and business terms, to jump ahead of the competition in a way that is only possible during a period of significant transformation as the one that we are in today. I personally believe that all of you that have chosen to join this summit has done so because you recognize this opportunity as leaders. So as we leave here, as Biljana said this morning, it is up to us to convert that opportunity into a real new reality. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rikard, for the nice and comprehensive introduction. Let me now start with the question sessions. I'll start first with the distinguished minister. Minister Đurović, as I said, we are very happy and graced to have you with us in this panel. Let me start first with a more general question. How important are the ESG standards for the economic development of the countries of the Western Balkans, but in particular for your country, Montenegro?
Da ste prije 20 godina bilo koga pitali širom Evrope i širom svijeta šta je suština i smisao biznisa, odgovor bi bio profit. Zašto profit? Iz prostog razloga što otvaraju se nova radna mjesta, manja nezaposlenost, kompanije imaju veću zaradu i ja mislim da u tom trenutku niko nije razmišljao da će doći ovaj dan o kojem mi sada pričamo. Međutim, šta se desilo? Ja mislim da se desilo da se stvorila potreba koja je kreirala ESG standard. Potreba da zaštitimo životnu sredinu, potreba da budemo društveno odgovorni i potreba da budemo bolji u korporativnom upravljanju. Mi u Crnoj Gori, a nisam siguran da je to implementirano baš svugdje i u Evropi, da su jasno definisani ti ESG standardi i da svugdje postoji to neko nefinансijsko izvještavanje koje bi uključivalo ESG standarde. Kod nas to ne postoji, ali javila se, tačnije, postoji potreba da se bavimo ESG standardima pojedinačno, zavisno od situacije do situacije, a onda generalno možemo da pričamo da se mi ovdje u Crnoj Gori bavimo ESG standardima. Pa ja ću početi od zaštite životne sredine. Naravno, imamo i dosta nedostataka, vjerovatno mnogi od vas znaju da smo mi prva ekološka država, ali da imamo mnogo toga da uradimo po pitanju ekologije i zaštite životne sredine, ali ja ću da pričam ono šta je ova vlada uradila po tom pitanju. Mi smo zaštitili glavno vodoizvorište s kojim se snadbijevalo cijelo crnogorsko primorje od pojedinaca koji su nesrazmjerno eksploatisali šljunak iz toga izvorišta, samim tim doveli upitno snadbijevanja crnogorskim primjerom vodom. Morali smo da idemo radikalnim metodama iz prostog razloga što je zaštita životne sredine i zaštita prirode i zaštite građana i pravo građana Crne Gore da imaju pijaću vodu mnogo veće nego što je profit. Što se tiče društvene odgovornosti, polako se i kod naših kompanija razvija ta svijest da treba da budete društveno odgovorni i da vratite određeni dio prihoda državi. Ja moram sa ponosom da istaknem jedan zadnji projekat i saradnju vlade Crne Gore i privrede Crne Gore, a akcija se zove Stop inflaciji. Naime, uočili smo, kao i u svim zemljama, je li tako, širom svijeta, da je inflacija bila galopirajuća i uočili smo to da naši građani imaju problem u kupovini prosto osnovnih životnih namirnica i tada se desila jedna nevjerovatna sinergija pokrenuta i inicirana od Ministarstva ekonomskog razvoja i turizma, koja je naišla na jedan odziv prvo trgovačkih lanaca, da u akciji Stop inflaciji spuste cijene drastično, a onda se kao lavina zakotrljala ta akcija i na druge kompanije, pa su se uključile i farmaceutske kompanije, apoteke, pa su uključile telekomunikacijne kompanije i ja mislim da ćemo sljedeće nedelje uključiti još kompanije. Rezultat toga jeste da smo u ovome trenutku, odgovorno tvrdim, najjeftinija država što se tiče namirnica i da sa ponosom mogu da kažem da su brojne naše kompanije u ovoj akciji pokazale društvenu odgovornost i prepoznale potrebu da budu partneri građanima i da vrate dio profita građanima Crne Gore. I treći segment koji je također vrlo važan jeste to korporativno upravljanje. Naravno i tu imamo dosta još da radimo, da razvijamo, da se ugledamo na druge države koje su razvile taj segment korporativnog upravljanja na jedan bolji način, ali u svakom slučaju i tu se vide pomaci, a naročito u pogledu participacije žena u upravnim odborima. Evo ja sada gledam uvaženu koleginicu Irenu, direktoricu Investicionog razvojnog fonda, koja onako svojski gura tu participaciju i veće učešće žena u upravnim odborima i na direktorskim pozicijama. Ja mislim da se ta situacija popravlja, ne možda onim tempom koji bi željeli, ali u svakom slučaju idemo korak po korak, to prosto nije moje samo zapažanje, nego brojke i cifre pokazuju. I da zaključim sa onim pitanjem kojim sam i započeo, kada je nekada odgovor šta je suština biznisa bio profit, danas bi na isto to pitanje taj odgovor bio unaprijeđen da nije samo profit, već i zaštita životne okoline, već i korporativno upravljanje i društvenu odgovornost.
Thank you very much. You are right that there is a change in the mindset of companies and especially employees now when they want to look for a job. The main thing that they would be looking for in an employer is their values and their value proposition. Let me go further to Ms. Trninić from the Coca-Cola company. Ms. Trninić, we know that the SLO is not a physical document. I mean, you can't print it, you can't store it electronically in your device. And in this case, normally the audience would ask, how does a company know that it owns a social license to operate, or the other way around? How would they know that they don't have one?
Thank you for the invitation to share what Coca-Cola system is doing with regards to ESG, and thank you for staying with us in the afternoon. To your question, social license to operate should not be owned, it should be earned. And the way to earn social license to operate is by actually, you understand from your key stakeholders, being the employees, your investors, your customers, your consumers, the community you operate, you talk to them and you understand from them with regards to the local operation, where the business, where you operate the business, you understand from them what are the ESG concerns that they are having. From that point, you are actually understanding where you as a business are standing with regards to those concerns. So you go back in-house, you understand how is your performance actually with regards to the concerns. Then you do a risk assessment, you understand what are the high areas of risks, you make a thorough planning, you execute your plans, you monitor your performance, and you report your progress. And this is regardless of the scale of the business, regardless of the geography you operate. This is critically important, really, because based on that reporting, based on the transparency in your operations, you are actually earning your social license to operate. If you just put it somewhere, it's a commercial. But then you need to prove case to your critical stakeholders that what you are saying that you are doing, then you are actually doing, and you are then communicating to all those relevant stakeholders about the progress that you are making. And after all, you are giving some commitment, because the reporting is also sort of a public commitment that the general public, but everyone else can actually hold you accountable and say, I don't know, after a year or so, you say, hey, you said this, but it's not there. So, to your question, the social license to operate should definitely be earned, and those who don't have it, they already know they're not having it. Last but not least, there is always a possibility for a company, for a business, to assign for the third-party ranking, scoring, and hereby I would really like to share how proud I am of our bottling partner, Coca-Cola HBC, Hellenic bottling company, that is operating also in the Montenegrin market, for being in top 1% within the S&P Global ESG ranking, being within the first 1% of the companies among 7,800 companies from 61 different sectors and industries. So this is something that at the end of the day is actually the confirmation if you have the rights to earn the social license to operate.
Ja se nadam da će Coca-Cola biti partner akciji Stop inflacije.
In the speech, you did not speak much about standards in ESG standards. How do you view these ESG standards? 2 minutes.
Standards are very important. I think standards are very important because they can help guide a company on this journey to develop effective strategy. I think standards are very important because they can help guide governments on the regulatory journey, and I think as Mr. Spano pointed out this morning, we're seeing a shift from sort of voluntary into more obligatory standards, etc. I think standards are very important because standards will help convince stakeholders about our commitment. But I also think the standards are complicated because the last check I did, there was about 400 different ESG standards which are now applicable. So which ones do you choose? So I think that standard is important. I think we will see an evolution where they become more important as they get translated into a regulatory framework. But I will conclude by saying that, of course, standards, to a large extent, is a question about compliance. And you do not become a leader by being compliant.
Definitely, yes. We need compliance, otherwise they wouldn't make sense at all. Let me move further to Ms. Ristić from Mastercard. We know that Mastercard is one of the biggest payment networks globally, facilitating global commerce, which means that you have access to huge numbers of data, sensitive data, and you are in constant pressure to protect your social license. How does Mastercard approach the maintenance of its social license to operate?
You just tackled actually S and G aspect of our ESG strategy. We as a global company, we do care about sustainability principles in all ESG aspects a lot. When it comes to data, data are driving also business, but technology at the same in digital world. So they are very important. We take care of data in a very special way. We analyze data in collective way in order to get insights about what our customers need, what are their preferences and expectations, and this is what we use to design our product, services, and solutions. And this is about the use of it. And actually, we also design special experiences based on these insights, and this is something that our customers are appreciating. When it comes to trust, another aspect of data, we care about data privacy a lot and how we handle the data that we are in touch with. For 60 years, our actually biggest asset is our network. We connect different stakeholders across the world, and they trust us because we handle data in very secure and safety way. We access, use, and protect data at the same time, and through our network on a global scale, at annual level, we see 125 billion transactions going through. Every time you swipe, dip, or tap your card, it goes through our network, and this number is increasing, which means that the trust in us is increasing. And why? The question is why? Because we really increase even and go beyond local laws, GDPR laws. So we put additional layers of data privacy principles. We put people first. So the data is their own. So they control data. And they should benefit from the data. We just take care of safety and security. In 2022, we introduced privacy by design, which means that additional layers of security and safety is in place. This is actually tokenization, encryption, anonymization when it comes to designing our products and services. When it comes to ES part of our ESG strategy, this is the most important for us because it is linked to our core business and it is linked to financial inclusion. which is our global goal. And we plan to include 1 billion people by 2025 into digital economy, but at the same time, 50 million small and micro businesses, out of which 25 million women entrepreneurs. So very ambitious goals, but we are about to achieve it very soon.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you very much. Milan, sorry that we kept you waiting longer than expected. You come from the civil society, which means that you are largely exposed to the issue of bringing stakeholders together. Civil society acts as a link between citizens on one side, corporations and state institutions, and I'm sure that you've had enough opportunities where you have acted yourself as this linking point between all these stakeholders. What is your opinion on these consultations with stakeholders, which are supposed to be conducted by the private sector? Do we have this genuine level of stakeholder engagement between the private sector and the citizens on the other side?
Coming also, thank you for the question, but coming from NALED, that's National Alliance for Local Economic Development, one of the key issues is also bringing business together with local stakeholders, also municipalities, and something we didn't speak today much, but that's the groundwork, and that's something that also Rikard was mentioning, how these initiatives have to come from the ground. Just yesterday we opened some discussion among the region, here also in Montenegro, about the employment and the way how we start this seasonal work as something that will give additional rights to those who are now working in this gray economy and should come back. And this is one of the initiatives that in Serbia started fully from the ground. So in cooperation between local self-government and local businesses in agriculture who initiated that process, then NALED and also GIZ, we took it as something very valuable message, and then we transferred it back to the state. So now, since 2018, we have the law in Serbia that regulates agriculture and seasonal work. We have so many initiatives also with Mastercard, and I'm very happy to sit in a panel with Coca-Cola and Mastercard, because we have so many ground initiatives as NALED and also as other parts of the civil society that are bringing those changes and all the three letters back to the citizens. And I see it as a constant process. It's like with the human rights. If you neglect it for a while, if you don't upgrade it every day, you will lose it and you will lose the ground. We have examples from Hungary. We have other examples. I'm quote Hungarian, so I can say it. But these are the things that it's a constant race. And I see the role of a civil society as a role of, and all of us human rights defenders and those who are promoting those rights and those three letters now, as electric rabbit, if you know those races. So we're running ahead, and there are other stakeholders who would like to run later on. State is also a bit slower, but also reacting, and I see them as responding. But the strength lies, and also in this initiative, that businesses can be electric rabbits, that they can lead the change, they can be a real change, and also the leaders in many of the initiatives. There are help from these financial institutions who will link any kind of support to businesses with the ESG standards. So we have a lot of, and I think the momentum is now that, as we stated also in the morning, that this will be a time for a change. There are a lot of possibilities for that, and we should catch it. It's good to have that kind of initiative coming from the region, because we have so many things in common. Minister Đurović mentioned the things with the exploiting, I think, the pebbles, or how do you translate it, from the very same issue I had with municipalities in Serbia along Drina. So this is a common regional issue. There are things being devastated by the businesses. We should try to work on one side against those who are not responding to ESG, but also to support the ones who are in that kind of dialogue with the local communities, with the civil society, with state institutions, and that's how I see our role. Those who know me know that I'm all into dialogue, and I believe this is one of the ways how to solve so many issues on a political side, but also on the side of businesses and civil society. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll stick with you for another question. There is this widespread misconception, or maybe it's a true perception that companies in the Western Balkans usually underestimate the social licenses to operate. I mean, they would go the long way to obtain all formal and legal permits, but when it comes to social licenses to operate, they would maybe not invest much time and resources in obtaining the SLO. What is your take on this?
Well, I'll be more optimistic. There are leaders on the market, and it's on one side, it's the consumers who will dictate a bit the pace and also the speed of the changes. But on the other side, there is some potential that we are currently losing in the whole region, and that's human capital. People are leaving this region, so they will also demand that their company is aligning with the things they're taking care of. So if either E or S or any letters from that we are talking today is not recognized by their company, that's the way how they will choose where they will work. So it's another, I think, chance for us to see on a consumer side, but also on the side of those who will be working in those companies, how, and it will be, I think, constant battle how to keep the workers in your company motivated and also very active in advocating for the rights that we are talking today. So I think there is potential, and I'm as usual optimistic. Sometimes, you know, political and many other lives are striking me directly, or as all of us are struck by these things. But it is essential to see that the chances here, we have strong leaders on all sides. We have to have political leaders much more motivated. We saw this morning a president being very sincere in opening this topic, so it's a signal. And we should see in the region who is a champion of ESG and try to make a positive race, because we always compete with negative issues. It's constant race. You know, so I'm following the whole in the last 30 years since I started being active in social lives and also in many others, how we compete in negative. But let's start and try to compete in positive things.
Thank you very much. Minister, I'm coming back to you with a similar question. What do you think are the trends when it comes to social licenses to operate and the ESG in general? What are the challenges, the opportunities that lay ahead for the region and for Montenegro in particular?
Ja mogu da kažem ono što je neki plan vlade da će da uradi u narednom periodu kako bi se, tačnije trendovi koje mi želimo da sprovedemo u narednom periodu kako bi povećali i uticali na razvoj ESG standarda. Mada moram da priznam, ovo vrijeme zbunjuje, imam osjećaj da igramo šah, kako se odbrojava, pa da ne bi pala zastavica bilje, moram biti brz. Mi planiramo da investiramo u privredu ove godine kroz podsticajne mjere 8 miliona eura. Želimo da targetiramo one najranjivije grupe, a to su žene u biznisu, mladi u biznisu, oni koji kreću u biznis. Želimo da podržimo biznise koji se zasnivaju na prelasku na zeleno poslovanje i na biznisu u digitalnoj transformaciji naše privrede. Imamo dosta posla da radimo, ali šta je ono najbitnije? Jeste da su naše kompanije polako prepoznaju potrebu da implementiraju ESG standarde i mislim da je jedan od glavnih izazova na koje moramo raditi, gdje se moraju uključiti drugi, a mislim između ostalog, evo, tu je predsjednica Privredne komore, pa i ona, mislim da i Privredna komora mora dati taj doprinos kroz jedan organizovanje konsaltinga, organizovanje savjetnika koji će našim kompanijama objašnjavati suštinu ESG standarda, kako ih implementirati i kako na taj način naše kompanije mogu da budu, da se takmiče sa evropskim kompanijama i eventualno da svoj proizvod plasiraju na evropsko tržište bolje i na jedan odgovorni način.
Thank you very much. Short and concise. Rikard, we mentioned that you have been a leader in ESG for many years. Like, you've been discussing this when many of us maybe didn't even know that there would be such a standard put in place. What do you think is the biggest change that has occurred through these years, especially with this popping up of the issue of ESG and SLOs, as we see is high on the agenda anywhere in the world now?
I think the difference is the first time I got involved in a project with very complex environmental and social impacts, which was to drill for oil and gas in the Amazon basin in Brazil. I was trying to break down the door to get into the boardroom to sort of share that this could be a potential big challenge and risk. Today, I'm the guy sitting in the chair in that boardroom because there is a recognition that these issues are there. What has been the fundamental driver, and I see this when I sort of support and advise other leaders in both business and government, is the fact that ultimately people vote with their feet. Be that political voters, or be that employees, or be that consumers, they vote with their feet. Means that they go to where they feel that they have a connection. And that connection today will be with those service providers and product providers that act in a way that they can relate to. And with the population at large now having gotten to really a critical mass on the awareness of environmental impact and climate change, and many of them being directly affected from sort of socioeconomic impacts, this has fundamentally shifted. And I think what has really been the icing on that cake, which has been in the last couple of years, we in extractives and energy, we've had to deal with this for the better part of 30, 40 years because of where we were. But what has been a big shift is now how the financial sector has moved into this as well, and actually conditioning access to capital and risk capital on a lot of these criteria. So I think we are in a fundamentally different world today. But I think that's very good because we are running against the clock, so we're getting everybody to the table. And I think that's really been a huge shift in the last 25 years that I have been involved.
Absolutely. Let me go to Ms. Trninić from the Coca-Cola company. While preparing for this panel, I also had a chance to explore what the Coca-Cola company is doing in the topic of ESG, and I saw that you're publishing a yearly report on ESG. What is the impact of reports of this type in keeping the audience, the stakeholders engaged with the operations of companies like the Coca-Cola company?
As I already mentioned, when you publish an ESG report, you're giving a kind of a public commitment that, in a way, you are providing to the publicity the information on what you are doing at the moment, what has been done the previous year, and you're giving through the targets and commitments, you're giving the public commitments. You are held accountable for what you are saying when it comes to your ESG performance. The way it impacts, your whole business environment is that it's actually, if you deliver according to those commitments, you're actually building the trust and credibility of your company. And that is definitely leading to a stronger reputation of your business. That is definitely increasing the transparency towards all your stakeholders and interested publics that you work with, either on the local or on the global level. That is definitely creating more attractiveness for investors. And the minister was just mentioning what will be the areas where the state will invest. Being that a public investment or a private investment, if you do deliver according to your commitments and you do deliver the high ESG performance, you're definitely more interesting for the future investments. And it is also very important that it is giving you a competitive advantage at the end of the day. And the better you perform, the higher is the value of your shares if you are on the stock exchange, because this is now really highly valued and looked for. you are becoming more competitive in that sense, that you're becoming more competitive towards the consumers and the customers, because it has been already mentioned, the people, the ordinary people, they feed their feet are bringing them to the place that are at the higher ESG level, or they're actually going for the products that can demonstrate from the companies that can demonstrate the high ESG performance.
Thank you very much. Now I go back to Jelena, number 2, Mastercard. We mentioned that this is a leading global payments and technology company, and it has huge impact in the financial services industry and the communities it serves. So my question would be, how does Mastercard identify any possible, how to say, threats or problems that citizens or your clients could potentially face during your operations?
We rely a lot on voice of the customer when bringing decisions what to do in all 3 ESG aspects. ESG is not just a nice topic to talk about. It's a complex problem that we should all gather around and do something about it. Those companies and businesses who are treating ESG as PR and marketing tool should, as soon as possible, reconsider their strategies because consumers are savvy. They recognize easily greenwashing and they're vocal about it. At the same time, they positively react when businesses are genuinely taking care of local communities about all aspects, environmental, social, and governance. We are among the companies, and I'm happy to see more and more companies worldwide, including ESG in their objectives and their strategies. And I'm proud to say that starting from this year, we linked our compensation model to ESG performance. So our annual bonuses depend on how we deliver against all these 3 aspects, which is a bold decision to make. But not only that, you have to not only talk about, but do concrete actions when it comes to ESG. And I mentioned a couple of them. We are supporting women leaders in order to decrease gender pay gap. We are fighting for net zero carbon footprint through Priceless Planet Coalition. We do many local and global initiatives with our partners. There are many challenges on the way. We shouldn't give up. We should stay dedicated and motivate not only ourselves, but everyone to join forces and become a really good role model of how ESG should be done successfully.
Thank you. Minister Đurović, back to you now. What would be your message to the business sector in the Western Balkans?
Moja glavna poruka bi bila da se kompanije ne plaše ESG standarda, da uvođenje implementacije ESG standarda ne znači pad profita, čak suprotno. Mislim da to donosi značajne benefite. Druga poruka koju bih poslao sa ovoga ljudima, i možda ovdje ima investitora, jeste da se vlada Crne Gore trudi da kreira jedan povoljan i stimulativan biznis ambijent i da su naša vrata vlade Crne Gore otvorena za sve investitore, a naročito za one koji su implementirali i koji sprovode ESG standarde i koji žele da se bave biznisom koji podržavaju ESG standarde.
Thank you very much. I see that time is up, but I would still ask very quick, and I would really appreciate short 30-second answers. Ms. Ristić from Mastercard, there is a very nice initiative by Mastercard which aims to restore 100 million trees by 2025. What is the impact that you observe so far?
We are gathering more and more partners to join us in these efforts. consumers are savvy, and in surveys that we did, they put this as very important goal that they expect us to do when it comes to reforestation and also tree planting. We have 18 active projects around the world at 6 continents. We are doing well by doing good, but coming back to fighting against climate change, not only through Priceless Planet Coalition, which is our most prominent program in this respect, we brought a very bold decision that I am very proud of. We decided that as of 1st of January 2028, all new ordered and issued cards around the world should be made from sustainable plastic. So no longer PVC. And we are inviting all our partners to join in this respect.
Thank you. Rikard, one short advice to companies that want to become ESG leaders. One.
Keep it simple. Figure out where are your impacts, where do you need to do better, and where do you have the opportunity to amplify the good that you're really doing. Keep it simple, get it going, you will become leaders.
Thank you. Mr. Trninić, one instance of a successful partnership or collaboration that you have initiated with the local community. 30 seconds.
One.
Only one.
Oh my God. Okay. Because we are here in Montenegro, I would like to mention the Montenegrin projects, and I will mention 2 of them. The one is Catch the Clean Wave that we did with HEREMA sector down the coast and with the local municipalities to improve the packaging waste collection. And that has been also done with the public sector in partnership with the public sector and support of the public sector. The other one that is just now going, also related to the environment and the packaging, of course, packaging is for us very important, is the packaging EPR and the deposit study that is done together with Montenegrin Chamber of Commerce and some other industry partners. The reason why I mentioned these 2 is because without this institutional partnership and a credible partners, NALED being one of our partners in Serbia, UNDP, you know, you can really, with such a partnership, you can really make a difference. And for us as a company, we refresh the world and we make a difference. So with that, I will conclude.
Thank you very much. Milan, last question for you. What is the level of understanding of stakeholders in providing real impact and in providing real feedback?
If I may, for the end, just disagree also with your question, so I'll answer something fully different. And also to disagree with Minister Đurović, because he said that companies should not be afraid of ESGs. I would state, although agreeing partly, that companies should be afraid, because it will become compulsory, it will close markets, so we should think in advance. So just disagreeing is very good, and I think that disagreeing on a panel is also a very constructive way of thinking. Civil society always disagrees, but then we find some of the solutions, and I hope we'll together, all 6 of us, will give some of the new solutions for ESGs. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Let me provide some final wrap-up for the panel. First thing discussed is that SLO is a very critical aspect of doing business in the Western Balkans, and its relevance is increasing with each passing day, year. Companies are seriously adopting key social principles such as transparency, accountability, and stakeholder management, as is the case with the 2 companies here, Mastercard and the Coca-Cola company. There are various strategies and approaches that companies use to foster positive relationships and maintain trust with local communities. Mentioned by Milan, these include structured consultations, effective communications, and so on. And there are lots of opportunities, as mentioned by Minister, and benefits of meeting ESG standards, such as improving the sustainability of business operations and creating long-term value for stakeholders and, of course, with the end goal to impact the sustainable development of the whole Western Balkans region. I would like just to thank my panelists for this amazing discussion. It was short but sweet. I wish we had more time, but maybe next year we're going to have 120 minutes minimum so that we have enough time to go through all the questions in details. Thank you very much.